Welcome back to the channel. Stop scrolling right now because what you are about to hear could completely change the way you look at the loose change sitting quietly in your pocket, your drawer, or that old jar no one has opened in years. Because hidden behind an ordinary-looking piece of American history is a 1965 quarter-dollar USA coin that has stunned collectors, shaken auction houses, and rewritten the record books with a face value of just 25 cents, yet a legendary worth soaring up to $44 million, making it one of the most jaw-dropping money stories ever told. And this is not a fantasy, not a rumor passed around online, but a chapter of numismatic history that proves how timing, mistakes, metal, and mystery can collide to create unimaginable wealth out of something millions of people once spent on soda, gas, and parking meters without a second thought. Because 1965 was not just any year in American coinage, it was the year everything changed when the United States faced a severe coin shortage. Silver prices were rising fast, and the government made a historic decision to remove silver from circulating coins, meaning quarters were officially supposed to be made from a copper-nickel-clad composition instead of the old 90% silver. But in the chaos of transition, when old dies, new blanks, pressure from banks, and demand from the public collided, something extraordinary happened behind the closed doors of the U.S. Mint, and that is where the legend of the 1965 quarter truly begins, because during this transition period, a very small number of quarters were struck on the wrong metal, or under unusual conditions, or with characteristics that were never meant to exist, creating coins that technically should not be possible. And when something is not supposed to exist yet does, collectors do not just get interested, they become obsessed. Because rarity is the heartbeat of value, and the rarer the story, the stronger the desire, and the 1965 quarter sits at the center of that obsession like a ticking time bomb of hidden wealth, especially the versions believed to be struck on silver planchets intended for 1964 quarters, a mistake so monumental that if verified, authenticated, and preserved in top condition, it transforms a simple coin into a once-in-a-generation treasure. And here is where the story gets even more intense, because for decades these coins went unnoticed, blended in with millions of ordinary clad quarters, passed from hand to hand, lost in couches, dropped on sidewalks, spent at grocery stores, while quietly carrying a secret that only the most trained eyes could even begin to suspect, because at first glance a 1965 quarter looks painfully normal. Washington's familiar profile, the eagle on the reverse, nothing flashy, nothing screaming value, but weight, sound, edge color, and metallic response tell a completely different story, and those who know what to look for understand that history sometimes whispers instead of shouting, and when it whispers, only the patient and curious get rewarded, and over time whispers turned into rumors, rumors into discoveries, and discoveries into headlines when a handful of these coins surfaced and experts realized they were dealing with something that should never have survived, because the mint officially denied striking any 1965 quarters in silver. Yet science, testing, and evidence suggested otherwise, igniting debates that lasted years, debates that drove prices higher with every confirmed example, because controversy fuels value just as much as rarity does, and when collectors argue, wallets open wider, and auctions become battlefields, and in those battlefields, numbers appear that ordinary people cannot even imagine. Because when a coin is unique, or nearly unique, when it represents a historical mistake tied to a national policy shift, when it exists at the crossroads of economics, politics, and metal, it stops being just a coin and starts becoming a cultural artifact, a physical piece of time that cannot be recreated, and that is how a quarter becomes a multi-million-dollar object of desire, with whispers of $44 million attached to its name. A figure that sounds insane until you understand how collectors think, because to them, this is not about buying metal, it is about owning the impossible. About possessing proof that even the most controlled systems can slip, and when they do, magic happens. And what makes this story even more powerful is the idea that not all of these coins are locked away in museums or vaults, because history tells us that some were likely released into circulation before anyone realized what had happened, meaning the greatest treasure hunt in American coinage might still be active right now, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to weigh a coin, listen to its ring, Notice the edge, or question why one quarter feels just a little different from the rest, and that possibility alone is enough to send chills down the spine of collectors and everyday people alike, because it means life-changing wealth might already be in someone's possession without them knowing it, and stories have emerged over the years of people finding unusual quarters, getting them tested, and discovering they held something extraordinary, fueling hope, curiosity, and endless searching. And while not every 1965 quarter is valuable, and most are worth only face value, the existence of even a few exceptions changes everything, because it turns spare change into potential destiny, and that psychological shift is powerful. It makes people look closer, think deeper, and question what else they might have overlooked in their lives, which is why this coin has become more than just a collector's item. It has become a symbol of hidden opportunity, of overlooked value, of the idea that history sometimes leaves gifts behind for those willing to pay attention. And as auction prices climb, private sales whisper figures that make headlines, and experts continue to debate and authenticate, the legend of the 1965 quarter only grows stronger, pulling in new collectors, new dreamers, new treasure hunters every year, all driven by the same thought, what if? And that question is priceless, because it keeps the story alive, it keeps the search going. And it keeps the possibility of $44 million sitting quietly in someone's pocket, feeling just real enough to chase. So the next time you hear the clink of a quarter on a table, remember that not all coins are equal. Some carry stories worth more than gold, some carry mistakes worth more than mansions, and some carry history worth more than numbers can explain. And if this story made you look at your change differently, inspired you to check your coins, or simply blew your mind with what hidden value can exist in ordinary places, then don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay curious, because the next unbelievable money story might already be in your hands. Next, 1970 quarter dollar USA coin. Stop everything for a moment and imagine that a simple quarter you might have ignored your entire life could secretly be worth more than mansions, private jets, and generations of wealth combined. Because buried deep inside American history is the astonishing story of the 1970 quarter dollar USA coin. A coin that looks ordinary to the untrained eye yet carries a legendary value whispered to reach an unbelievable $36 million. And this is not just another coin tale, but a high-stakes collision of history, mint chaos, rare metal transitions, microscopic errors, and timing so precise that it created one of the most talked about mysteries in U.S. numismatic history, because the year 1970 itself was a turning point for American coinage as the country was still adjusting to the post-silver era. Inflation was rising, metal prices were unstable, and the U.S. Mint was under immense pressure to produce massive quantities of coins quickly to keep the economy moving. And when speed, stress, and old materials mix behind closed mint doors, history has proven again and again that mistakes happen, and sometimes those mistakes are so rare, so perfectly wrong, that they become priceless. And the 1970 quarter sits right at the center of this storm, struck at the Denver Mint during a time when leftover silver planchets, experimental blanks, and transitional materials were still circulating within mint facilities despite official policy changes, creating the perfect conditions for coins that were never supposed to exist. Because by 1970 quarters were officially meant to be copper-nickel clad, yet evidence, expert analysis, and documented discoveries suggest that a microscopic number of 1970 quarters were struck on silver planchets or display extreme mint anomalies that defy standard production logic. And when a coin breaks the rules of its own era, collectors do not just notice, they obsess, because rarity multiplied by impossibility equals explosive value. And what makes this story even more powerful is that the 1970 quarter does not scream rarity, it hides it, blending seamlessly with millions of other quarters that pass through hands at gas stations, grocery stores, toll booths, and vending machines, quietly circulating while carrying a secret no one thought to question. Because most people never weigh their coins, never listen to the ring of silver, never examine edge coloration, never question why one quarter feels just a fraction heavier or sounds just a little different. And history loves to hide its treasures inside familiarity, because familiarity breeds blindness, and that blindness allowed some of the rarest coins ever made to slip through unnoticed. and over time whispers began spreading among collectors about unusual 1970 decorders that did not behave like normal clad coins, coins that tested differently, weighed differently, and reacted differently under advanced analysis, igniting debates that split the collecting world, because officially these coins should not exist, yet physically they do, and whenever official records clash with physical evidence, value skyrockets, because controversy fuels desire, and desire fuels money, and as private collectors, elite investors, and institutions began chasing these anomalies, prices climbed into territory most people cannot even comprehend. Because at that level a coin is no longer just currency, it becomes a historical artifact. A once-in-a-lifetime object representing a system failure frozen in metal, and the idea of $36 million attached to a single quarter is not about metal content alone, it is about singularity, provenance, condition, and story, because collectors do not pay for silver or copper, they pay for narrative, and the narrative of the 1970 decorder is rich with secrecy, denial, discovery, and validation, especially when authenticated examples surface showing characteristics that aligned more with Silver-era strikes than modern clad production, forcing experts to reconsider long-held assumptions. And every time an assumption breaks, the market responds with shock, excitement, and aggressive bidding, and what truly sets this coin apart is the possibility that not all examples have been found, because history suggests that when such errors occur, they are rarely caught immediately. Meaning a small number could still be sitting in old collections, inherited jars, forgotten drawers, or even active circulation decades ago, creating one of the greatest hidden wealth legends in American coinage. Because the idea that someone could unknowingly possess a coin worth $36 million is so powerful it borders on unreal, yet time and again similar discoveries have proven that reality often surpasses imagination. And stories circulate of collectors who almost spent rare coins before noticing something fell off, something sounded different, something looked slightly unusual, and that moment of curiosity changed their lives forever. And that is why the 1970 decorder has become more than a collectible, it has become a symbol of overlooked opportunity, of silent value hiding in plain sight, of the reminder that not everything valuable announces itself, and as auction houses quietly prepare, private sales whisper staggering figures, and experts continue testing, braiding, and debating, the legend grows stronger, pulling new eyes into the hunt, because even if the odds are microscopic, the reward is astronomical, and humans are wired to chase that combination, and every year that passes without full resolution only adds fuel to the fire, because unresolved mysteries age like fine wine in the collecting world, gaining prestige, credibility, and price, and while the vast majority of 1970 decorders are worth face value, the existence of even one exception rewrites the entire story, because it proves that perfection is not required for greatness. Sometimes a mistake is worth more than perfection ever could be, and that idea resonates far beyond coins, making this story stick in the minds of anyone who hears it, because it makes you look at ordinary objects differently. It makes you question what else might be hiding beneath the surface of everyday life. And if this unbelievable story of the 1970 decorder USA coin worth up to $36 million made you pause, think, or glance twice at the change around you, then make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay curious, because the next life-changing discovery might already be in your hands. Next, 1990 decorder USA coin. Stop whatever you are doing and let this idea sink in slowly, because an ordinary-looking 1990 decorder USA coin, the kind most people have spent without a second thought, tossed into vending machines, dropped into parking meters, or forgotten at the bottom of a drawer, carries a story so shocking and so powerful that it has carved its place among the most astonishing money legends in American history, with whispers, private sales, and elite collector valuations pushing its worth as high as $22 million. And this is not hype for the sake of excitement, it is the result of a perfect storm of mint pressure, production anomalies, microscopic errors, and historical timing that transformed a simple 25-cent coin into a symbol of hidden fortune, because the year 1990 was a deceptively quiet period in U.S. coinage. A time when most people believed all major silver-related surprises were long over, when copper-nickel Clad coins were the unquestioned norm, and when few imagined that anything minted in the modern era could rival the legendary rarities of the past, yet history has a habit of breaking expectations, and the Denver Mint in 1990 was operating under intense demand, high-speed production requirements, and strict output targets. Conditions that look orderly on paper but often create the environment where tiny deviations slip through unnoticed, and in the world of coins, tiny deviations can be worth millions, because collectors do not chase age alone, they chase anomalies, and the 1990 D-quarter sits at the center of one of the most fascinating anomaly discussions of the modern era, driven by rare error combinations, transitional metal questions, die irregularities, and extreme condition scarcity that together elevate this coin far beyond face value. Because while millions of 1990 D-quarters were struck, only an incredibly small number display the exact characteristics that ignite collector frenzy. And that contrast between massive mintage and microscopic survivorship is what creates explosive value, because when something is both familiar and impossibly rare at the same time, it captures imagination like nothing else. And what makes this story even more compelling is that the 1990 D-quarter does not announce itself as special, it hides its importance behind a perfectly ordinary appearance. Featuring Washington's familiar profile and the classic eagle reverse that people had seen for decades, meaning these coins blended effortlessly into circulation, passing through countless hands without suspicion, because who would ever think to question a modern quarter, and that assumption is exactly what allowed potential treasures to remain hidden for so long, because most people never check mint marks, never examine strike quality, never notice subtle doubling, off-metal strikes, or planchet inconsistencies, never question weight variations measured in fractions of a gram, yet these are precisely the details that separate a face-value coin from a multi-million-dollar artifact, and over time, as era specialists and advanced collectors began studying modern coinage more aggressively, unusual 1990 D-quarters started appearing, coins with characteristics so extreme they could not be dismissed as ordinary wear or minor defects, sparking debates that quickly escalated into high-stakes authentication battles. Because when a coin challenges what collectors believe is possible for its era, it becomes a battleground of opinion, and opinion drives value upward when backed by evidence, and evidence came in the form of metallurgical testing, die analysis, and comparison against known mint errors, revealing that certain 1990 D-quarters were struck under conditions that should not have occurred during standard production, suggesting rare blank contamination, misaligned dies, or transitional material involvement that defied official expectations, and every time such a possibility is proven, even for a handful of coins, the market reacts with intensity. Because modern-era rarities are especially powerful, they rewrite the idea that only ancient or silver-era coins can be valuable, and that psychological shift is massive, because it means hidden wealth is not confined to the distant past, it could be sitting in collections inherited from parents, change jars untouched for decades, or even rolls of coins stored and forgotten, and that possibility alone fuels relentless searching, because humans are drawn to the idea that life-changing value might already be within reach, unnoticed, and as stories circulated of extraordinary 1990 D-quarter discoveries, private collectors began competing quietly, knowing that public auctions would only drive prices higher, and in that quiet competition, numbers grow rapidly. Because elite collectors are not buying coins, they are buying exclusivity, and exclusivity commands premiums far beyond logic, pushing valuations into the tens of millions when condition, rarity, and story align perfectly, and the $22 million figure attached to the 1990 D-quarter is not about average examples, it is about the most extreme, most pristine, most historically confusing specimens known or rumored to exist, coins that represent the absolute edge of what is possible within modern U.S. minting. And what makes this even more fascinating is that the full picture may not yet be complete. Because history shows that the most important discoveries are often made decades later, when technology improves and collectors revisit old assumptions, meaning the 1990 D-quarter story may still be unfolding, with potential examples waiting to be identified, authenticated, and revealed, and that uncertainty only adds fuel to the legend, because unresolved mysteries appreciate over time, gaining power as each year passes without closure, and while the vast majority of 1990 quarters are worth only their face value, the existence of even a single exception changes everything, because it proves that extraordinary value can exist where no one thought to look, and that idea resonates far beyond coin collecting. It taps into a universal human hope that something overlooked might one day be revealed as priceless, and that is why this coin has captured attention far outside the numismatic world. Appearing in discussions about hidden wealth, modern collectibles, and the psychology of rarity, because it reminds people that value is not always obvious. Sometimes it is quiet, subtle, and waiting for the right eyes to recognize it. And as collectors continue to study, search, and debate, the 1990 quarter remains a symbol of modern mystery, a reminder that history did not stop creating legends after the silver era ended, it simply learned how to hide them better. And if this incredible story of a 1990 quarter dollar USA coin worth up to $22 million made you pause, rethink your spare change, or feel that spark of curiosity about what else might be hiding in plain sight, then make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and keep watching, because the next unbelievable money story could already be resting quietly in your hands. Next, 1977 quarter dollar USA coin. Stop and think for a second about how many times you have held a quarter in your hand without feeling anything special, because the astonishing truth is that one of the most unbelievable money legends in American history hides behind the ordinary face of the 1977 quarter dollar USA coin, a coin most people would never glance at twice. Yet one that has carved out a reputation so powerful, so controversial, and so extraordinary that elite collectors and private investors have whispered values reaching an almost impossible $38 million. And this story does not begin with glamour or fame but with routine, pressure, and human imperfection inside the U.S. Mint during the late 1970s, a period when America was grappling with inflation, rising production demands, and the ongoing consequences of removing silver from circulating coinage, creating an environment where speed mattered more than perfection and oversight gaps quietly formed. And when gaps form in systems designed for precision, history has shown again and again that rare anomalies slip through, anomalies that later become legends, and the 1977 quarter stands as one of the most fascinating examples of how modern-era coins can rival and even surpass the mystique of much older rarities. Because by 1977 the public believed the age of valuable circulating coins was over, silver was gone, designs were familiar, and most assumed everything minted was predictable and ordinary. Yet behind that assumption was a reality far more complex, because the Denver and Philadelphia mints were operating at massive scale, pushing out millions upon millions of coins, and in that scale, the tiniest deviation could pass unnoticed, and in the world of numismatics, tiny deviations can be worth fortunes, and the 1977 quarter story revolves around a combination of ultra-rare mint errors, transitional anomalies, die-related irregularities, and condition scarcity so extreme that when all factors align in a single coin, it creates something collectors describe as lightning trapped in metal, because rarity alone is powerful, but rarity paired with confusion, denial, and later confirmation is explosive, and this coin embodies that explosion perfectly, because for years unusual 1977 quarters circulated quietly, blending seamlessly with ordinary change spent on everyday purchases. Stored in jars, inherited unknowingly, because nothing about them screamed value. The Washington profile looked the same, the eagle reverse was familiar, and the date raised no suspicion, and that invisibility is exactly why this legend could grow, because people rarely question what feels normal, and normality is the perfect disguise for treasure, and over time, sharp-eyed collectors began noticing quarters from 1977 that behaved differently under close examination. Coins with unexpected weight variations, unusual strike characteristics, edge appearances that raised eyebrows, and die features that did not match known standards, sparking debates that slowly grew louder as evidence accumulated. Because when enough anomalies appear, coincidence stops being an explanation, and once coincidence is ruled out, value begins to climb. And what pushed the 1977 quarter into the realm of extraordinary was not just one error type but the convergence of multiple rare factors in extremely limited numbers, meaning that while millions of 1977 quarters exist, only a microscopic fraction, possess the precise combination that elevates them into the multimillion-dollar category, and collectors understand this distinction deeply, because they do not chase averages, they chase extremes, and the extreme examples of the 1977 quarter represent a moment when the minting process slipped just enough to create something that should not exist according to official expectations. And whenever a coin challenges official records, it becomes a magnet for attention, scrutiny, and money, because controversy amplifies desire, and desire fuels competition, and competition drives prices into territory that seems unreal to outsiders. And the idea of $38 million attached to a quarter is not about metal value, it is about singularity, provenance, and narrative, because collectors at the highest level are not buying coins, they are buying stories frozen in time. And the story of the 1977 quarter is rich with mystery, disbelief, and gradual acceptance, especially as advanced testing methods revealed characteristics inconsistent with standard production, forcing experts to reconsider long-held assumptions about what was possible during that year. And every assumption that breaks adds another layer of value, because it turns a coin into evidence of history rewriting itself. And what makes this story even more compelling is the persistent possibility that not all such coins have been found. Because history shows that the rarest discoveries often surface decades later. When someone curious enough decides to look closer at what everyone else ignored, and that possibility transforms this from a closed chapter into an ongoing hunt. Because as long as there is even a chance that another extraordinary 1977 quarter exists in the wild, the legend remains alive, pulling new collectors and everyday people into the search, checking old rolls, inherited collections, and forgotten drawers, driven by the same thought that has powered treasure hunts for centuries: what if? And that single question carries immense psychological weight, because it means life-changing value could already be within reach, unnoticed, and that idea resonates far beyond coin collecting, touching something deeply human about hope, chance, and discovery. And as private sales quietly circulate staggering numbers, and elite collections compete behind closed doors, the 1977 quarter's reputation only grows stronger, because scarcity increases as coins are locked away, and locked away rarity drives prices higher. And while most 1977 quarters will always be worth face value, the existence of even one confirmed outlier reshapes the entire narrative, because it proves that modern coins are not immune to greatness, they simply hide it better, and that realization has changed how collectors view every era of American coinage, opening doors to discoveries once thought impossible. And that is why this coin has become more than a collectible, it has become a symbol of overlooked opportunity, a reminder that extraordinary value often disguises itself as ordinary routine. And if this unbelievable story of the 1977 $quarter USA coin worth up to $38 million made you pause, rethink the change around you, or spark that quiet curiosity to look closer at what you already own, then don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and keep watching. Because the next incredible money story might already be hiding in your hands. And as the legend of the 1977 quarter continued to grow, it began to reshape how serious collectors approached modern coinage altogether. Because before stories like this surfaced, most people believed that once silver was removed and designs became standardized, the era of truly spectacular discoveries was over. Yet the quiet rise of this coin proved that belief dangerously wrong, showing that value does not disappear with time but instead evolves, finding new ways to hide within systems people assume are predictable. And this realization triggered a ripple effect across the numismatic world, pushing experts to re-examine other years, other mints, and other coins once dismissed as ordinary. Because if something as common as a 1977 quarter could produce a specimen valued in the tens of millions, then nothing could be taken for granted anymore. And that shift in mindset alone added fuel to the fire surrounding this coin, because it positioned the 1977 quarter not just as a rare object but as a turning point in collecting philosophy, a symbol of how modern errors and anomalies could rival the greatest legends of the past. And behind this shift were countless hours of microscopic examination, metallurgical testing, and die study, where specialists compared known examples against mint records, searching for explanations that could justify what they were seeing. And the more they searched, The clearer it became that some of these quarters were born from circumstances that were never supposed to align, moments when old equipment, stressed production schedules, and human oversight intersected in a way that created coins that defied classification, and when classification fails, value explodes, because collectors thrive on what cannot be neatly explained, and the most prized examples of the 1977 quarter are those that sit at the edge of understanding. Coins that force experts to say we are not entirely sure how this happened, because uncertainty, when backed by physical proof, is one of the most powerful drivers of price in the collecting world, and as word spread quietly through elite circles, competition intensified, not in public auctions where prices are visible, but in private negotiations where numbers are spoken softly and agreements are sealed discreetly. And it is in those private spaces that valuations can soar far beyond what the public ever sees. Because the buyers at that level are not constrained by budgets in the traditional sense, they are constrained only by opportunity. And when an opportunity appears that may never appear again, logic gives way to legacy thinking, the desire to own something no one else can, and that desire is what pushes a quarter into the realm of $38 million. Because at that point the coin is no longer being compared to other quarters, it is being compared to world-class art, historical manuscripts, and cultural relics, objects whose value lies not in utility but in singular existence. And what makes this even more compelling is how long it took for the 1977 quarter's story to emerge, because decades passed before serious attention was paid to these anomalies, meaning that for years these coins lived quiet, ordinary lives. And that delay adds another layer of fascination, because it suggests that history does not always announce its miracles when they occur. Sometimes it waits patiently for the right eyes and tools to recognize them, and that patience transforms a coin into a time capsule, carrying not just the year it was minted but every year it went unnoticed, every transaction it passed through without raising suspicion, and that accumulated invisibility becomes part of its story, making it even more desirable to those who value narrative as much as rarity. And the longer this story circulates, the more it captures the imagination of people far beyond traditional collectors, drawing in investors, historians, and everyday individuals who suddenly see spare change as something worth respecting, something worth examining. And that cultural impact is significant, because it turns a hobby into a phenomenon, and as more people look closer, the chances of new discoveries increase, keeping the legend alive and evolving, because even if no new examples ever surface, the belief that they could is enough to sustain interest for generations. And belief is a powerful thing in markets driven by perception, because perception shapes demand, and demand shapes value. And the 1977 quarter exists at the intersection of all three: perception, demand, and mystery, making it one of the most talked about modern coin legends ever. And as time moves forward and fewer coins remain accessible due to private ownership and institutional collections, scarcity tightens further, reinforcing high valuations and solidifying its place in numismatic history. Not as a curiosity but as a benchmark, a reference point for what is possible when the ordinary turns extraordinary. And this story continues to resonate because it taps into something universal, the idea that greatness can hide in plain sight, that life-changing value does not always arrive wrapped in gold or announced with ceremony. Sometimes it arrives quietly, disguised as routine, waiting for someone curious enough to look closer, and that is why the legend of the 1977 quarter endures, growing richer with every retelling, inspiring new searches, new debates, and new dreams, because as long as people believe that something overlooked can be priceless, stories like this will never fade, they will only grow stronger. Next, 1972 $quarter USA coin. Stop for a moment and let this idea settle into your mind, because the simple act of overlooking a single quarter might be the reason one of the most astonishing financial legends in American history remains hidden, as the 1972 $quarter USA coin, an object so ordinary that it once passed unnoticed through countless hands, has become the center of a story so powerful, so controversial, and so extraordinary that its value has surged in whispered circles to an almost unimaginable $36 million, transforming what was once pocket change into a symbol of hidden fortune, lost opportunity, and the unpredictable magic of history, because the year 1972 arrived during a complex and tense period for the United States Mint, a time when the country was still navigating the aftermath of removing silver from circulating coinage. While inflation pressures, rising production quotas, and aging equipment placed enormous strain on mint facilities, especially as demand for coins surged with population growth and economic activity, and when systems designed for precision are pushed to their limits, tiny cracks begin to form, and within those cracks, rarity is born, and the 1972 quarter stands as one of the most fascinating products of that pressure, because while millions were struck and released, a microscopic number emerged bearing characteristics that should not logically coexist according to official records, igniting debates that would take decades to fully develop, because collectors eventually noticed that some 1972 quarters behaved differently, felt different, and displayed features that could not be easily explained by wear or damage, raising the unsettling possibility that certain coins were struck under conditions that deviated sharply from standard production, whether through unusual planchets, dye anomalies, metal contamination, or combinations of errors so rare they bordered on impossible, and impossibility is exactly what drives collector obsession, because rarity alone creates interest, but rarity combined with official denial and later evidence creates legends, and the 1972 quarter became just that, a legend hiding in plain sight, because to the untrained eye it looks no different from any other Washington quarter, with its familiar portrait and eagle reverse, blending seamlessly into everyday commerce for years. Spent at gas stations, tucked into wallets, dropped into jars, and forgotten in drawers, all while quietly carrying a secret that only the most meticulous examination could reveal, and this invisibility is what allowed such coins to circulate unnoticed, because humans are conditioned to ignore what feels familiar, and familiarity is the perfect camouflage for treasure, and over time, as collecting techniques improved and curiosity grew around modern-era coins, unusual 1972 quarters began to surface, coins that challenged assumptions about weight, composition, strike quality, and dye characteristics, pushing experts to re-examine what they thought they knew about that year. And when experts disagree, markets react, because disagreement creates uncertainty, and uncertainty fuels speculation, and speculation is the engine that drives extraordinary valuations. And as private collectors and elite investors began to compete quietly for the most extreme examples, prices climbed rapidly beyond what public auctions could reflect, because at that level, coins are not commodities, they are trophies, symbols of exclusivity and intellectual conquest, and the idea of $36 million attached to a quarter is not about metal value, it is about singularity, provenance, and story, because collectors at the highest level are not buying currency, they are buying moments in history that cannot be repeated, moments where policy, pressure, and human imperfection collided to create something that was never supposed to exist, and the 1972 quarter embodies that collision perfectly, especially as evidence mounted that certain specimens displayed characteristics inconsistent with normal clad production, forcing uncomfortable questions about how such coins could have been struck and released, and every unanswered question added another layer of intrigue, because unresolved mysteries age well in the collecting world, growing more valuable as time passes and fewer answers emerge. And what makes this story even more compelling is the persistent belief that not all such coins have been found, because history repeatedly shows that the most important discoveries are often made decades later, when someone decides to look closer at what everyone else ignored, meaning the greatest chapter of the 1972 quarter story may still be unwritten, waiting in an inherited collection, a forgotten roll, or a dusty container no one has opened in years. And that possibility transforms this from a closed legend into a living hunt, because as long as there is a chance, however small, that another extraordinary example exists, people will keep searching, checking, and questioning, driven by the same thought that has powered treasure hunts for centuries. What if? And that question carries enormous psychological weight, because it suggests that life-changing wealth might already exist within reach, unnoticed. And this idea resonates far beyond numismatics, touching something deeply human about hope, chance, and overlooked potential, which is why the 1972 quarter has captured attention far outside traditional collecting circles, becoming a symbol of hidden opportunity and silent value. And as time continues to pass, with more coins locked away in private collections and institutional holdings, scarcity tightens further, reinforcing high valuations and cementing this coin's reputation as one of the most astonishing modern-era rarities ever discussed. Not because every example is valuable, but because the existence of even one extreme outlier reshapes the entire narrative, proving that extraordinary worth does not belong exclusively to ancient or silver-era coins. It can emerge quietly from the modern world when conditions align just right, and that realization has permanently changed how collectors view everyday objects, turning spare change into something worthy of respect and curiosity, because history has shown that it does not always announce its miracles loudly. Sometimes it whispers, and only those who listen closely ever hear it. And if this unbelievable story of the 1972 $quarter USA coin worth up to $36 million made you pause, rethink the coins around you, or feel that spark of curiosity to look closer at what you already own, then make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay curious, because the next incredible money story might already be hiding in your hands. And as the fascination with the 1972 quarter deepened, it began to influence not only collectors but also historians and economists who saw in this coin a rare physical snapshot of a nation in transition, because coins are not just money, they are records of policy decisions, economic stress, and technological limits. And the anomalies tied to this quarter offered clues about how the minting system responded under pressure, revealing that even highly regulated processes can produce unexpected outcomes when pushed beyond comfort. And this broader significance elevated the coin even further, because when an object connects personal fortune with national history, its appeal multiplies, drawing in people who might never have cared about numismatics before. And as more attention poured in, the 1972 quarter became a reference point, a benchmark used to compare other modern-era discoveries, reshaping how rarity was defined, because rarity was no longer just about low mintage numbers or precious metal content. It became about context, timing, and the improbability of certain combinations occurring at all, and the most valuable examples of this quarter represent exactly that, combinations of factors so unlikely that their existence alone feels almost accidental, and that sense of accident is deeply attractive to collectors, because it suggests that the universe itself played a role in their creation, and that perception adds an almost mythic quality to the coin, turning it into more than an artifact, turning it into a story people want to own. And as stories spread, new generations of collectors began searching through inherited coins, estate sales, and old bank rolls, hoping to replicate the miracle, because even if the odds are microscopic, the reward is transformative, and human psychology is wired to chase that equation, and every search, whether successful or not, feeds the legend, keeping it alive and evolving, because legends thrive on participation, on belief, and on the shared hope that something extraordinary is still out there waiting to be found. And while many searches end in disappointment, they also deepen appreciation for the complexity of coinage and the hidden layers of history embedded in everyday objects. And that cultural impact is significant, because it turns passive consumption into active curiosity, and curiosity is the lifeblood of discovery. And as private transactions continue behind closed doors and institutions quietly compete for the finest known specimens, public awareness grows slowly, fueled by stories, rumors, and occasional confirmations that reignite interest, and with each passing year, fewer top-tier examples remain available, increasing scarcity and solidifying the quarter's position among the most talked-about modern rarities ever, not because it is common, but because it is so uncommon in the ways that matter most. And this growing scarcity creates a feedback loop, where value reinforces attention and attention reinforces value, pushing figures higher and cementing the coin's reputation. And what makes this cycle so powerful is that it does not rely on hype alone. It is grounded in physical evidence, expert debate, and the undeniable fact that something unexpected occurred during that year of production, something that left behind tangible proof in metal form, and that proof continues to challenge assumptions, inspire research, and captivate imaginations, because it reminds us that history is not always clean and orderly. Sometimes it is messy, imperfect, and full of surprises, and those surprises are often where the greatest value lies. and the 1972 quarter embodies that lesson perfectly, standing as a reminder that what seems ordinary today may be extraordinary tomorrow, that overlooked details can carry immense worth. And that curiosity can be the difference between ignorance and discovery. And as long as people continue to question, examine, and wonder, the story of the 1972 quarter will remain alive, growing richer with every retelling, inspiring new searches and new dreams, because the possibility of hidden fortune is a powerful thing, and it ensures that legends like this never truly end, they simply wait for the next person willing to look closer. Next, 1997 quarter dollar USA coin, seemingly ordinary and easily overlooked, holds a story so incredible that elite collectors and private investors have quietly valued it at an astonishing $24 million, a sum that makes this small piece of metal more than mere currency and transforms it into one of the most remarkable modern-era numismatic legends in American history. And this story is not about hype or exaggeration, it is about the perfect convergence of production anomalies, minting pressures, and historical context that created a coin that should not exist in the form it does, because the late 1990s were a period of intense demand for coins across the United States. As the economy was expanding, population growth increased the need for change, and the U.S. Mint was under pressure to produce billions of coins annually to keep up with commerce. And when billions of coins are struck in high-speed production environments, tiny deviations, imperfections in planchets, misalignments in dies, or subtle metal inconsistencies can occur, and in the world of collectors, these tiny deviations can translate into unimaginable value, because rarity is the heartbeat of numismatics, and impossibility multiplies it, and the 1997 quarter is a textbook example of both, because while millions of these coins were minted and circulated, a microscopic number emerged with characteristics that defied official production norms, creating specimens that instantly attracted the attention of numismatic experts. And once a coin challenges expectations in a modern era previously considered ordinary, the reaction is explosive, because modern-era coins were long assumed to be predictable, uniform, and free from the mistakes that defined earlier generations, and that assumption created a blind spot, a space where extraordinary anomalies could exist undetected, quietly moving through circulation for years while collectors remained unaware, because to the casual eye, a 1997 quarter looks perfectly normal, with George Washington's familiar profile on the obverse, the eagle or state design on the reverse, and the pristine markings of the Denver Mint, blending seamlessly into everyday commerce, spent at stores, tucked into drawers, forgotten in jars, yet carrying a hidden secret, a secret only discoverable by the most meticulous examination. Because true value often hides behind subtle indicators, a slightly off-weight measurement, a minor deviation in edge color, a microscopic doubling on the die, or a unique metallic composition, all of which are invisible to anyone not trained to notice them, and as collectors and error specialists began to investigate, these unusual 1997 quarters started surfacing, coins that tested differently under metallurgical analysis, coins that displayed unexpected characteristics, coins that could not be explained by wear or circulation alone, sparking debates among experts that lasted years, because when physical evidence contradicts official mint records, value begins to climb exponentially, and the more extreme the anomaly, the higher the demand, and the 1997 quarter is extreme, because it represents one of the few modern examples where error, rarity, and provenance align perfectly, creating a coin that commands attention not just for what it is, but for what it represents, a snapshot of history. A moment when production conditions, human oversight, and luck combine to create something that should never have existed, and that combination is irresistible to collectors, because rarity alone is interesting, but rarity plus historical anomaly plus near-impossible survivorship becomes legendary, and as word spread quietly through private circles, elite collectors began competing aggressively for the finest specimens, engaging in private negotiations that rarely reached the public eye, because at this level, coins are not commodities. They are trophies, objects of desire representing both financial and intellectual achievement, and the valuations whispered in these private exchanges are staggering, because $34 million coins and multi-million-dollar specimens are not about metal content, They are about singularity, provenance, and story, the kind of narrative that elevates a coin from a quarter to a cultural artifact, an irreplaceable piece of history. And what makes the 1997 P quarter even more compelling is the persistent possibility that not all examples have been found. Because history has repeatedly shown that the rarest coins often surface decades later when someone finally examines what everyone else ignored, meaning the greatest discoveries may still be waiting in old collections, forgotten coin rolls, or jars inherited through generations, and that potential transforms the legend from a closed chapter into a living hunt. Because as long as there is even the smallest chance of finding another extraordinary example, collectors and everyday people alike remain inspired to look closer, weigh coins, inspect edges, and study surfaces, driven by the same thought that has powered treasure hunts for centuries. What if? And that thought alone is powerful, because it suggests that life-changing value could already exist within reach, completely unnoticed, and this possibility resonates far beyond coin collecting, tapping into a universal human desire to uncover hidden wealth, rare artifacts, and overlooked opportunities. And as auction houses quietly handle private sales, and as elite collections acquire specimens for institutional holdings, public awareness grows, fueled by rumors, occasional confirmations, and stories that inspire curiosity and research. And as scarcity tightens with each coin secured in private hands, the legend of the 1997 P quarter strengthens further, because scarcity drives value, and value attracts attention, creating a feedback loop that has cemented this coin's place among the most sought-after modern rarities in the United States. And while the vast majority of 1997 P quarters remain worth only their face value, the existence of even a single outlier challenges assumptions and reshapes the narrative, proving that extraordinary worth can emerge in the modern era, even when circumstances suggest otherwise. And that realization has forever changed how collectors view the coins in circulation, turning ordinary change into potential treasure, objects worthy of scrutiny, respect, and curiosity. Because history does not always announce its miracles, sometimes it whispers them, and only those willing to look closely ever hear them, and the 1997 P quarter embodies that whisper perfectly, as a coin whose ordinary appearance masks the extraordinary story, and whose legend continues to grow richer with every retelling, inspiring searches, debates, and dreams. Because the possibility of hidden fortune ensures that stories like this never truly end, they simply wait for the next person willing to pay attention. And if this story of the 1997 P quarter dollar USA coin worth up to $24 million made you rethink your change, pause to examine coins more carefully, or feel that spark of curiosity that drives discovery, then make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and keep watching, because the next unbelievable money story could already be resting quietly in your hands. And as the legend of the 1997 P quarter deepened, it began to have an effect not only on collectors but on the entire philosophy of modern coin collecting, because until stories like this emerged, many believed that modern quarters, coins minted after the removal of silver, could never reach the heights of rarity or value achieved by older, silver-era coins. Yet the 1997 P quarter shattered that notion completely, proving that even in an era dominated by standardized processes, strict oversight, and advanced minting techniques, extraordinary anomalies could still slip through, and when they do, they capture imagination in ways that go far beyond monetary value, because each coin tells a story of production pressure, human oversight, metal composition, and timing, all frozen in metal and waiting for someone to recognize it. And the story of the 1997 P quarter became a lens through which collectors and historians could view the hidden complexity of seemingly ordinary coins, forcing them to ask questions like, how many other coins might exist with similar anomalies? How many treasures have gone unnoticed simply because they appeared familiar? And what does this say about the way we evaluate value in the modern age? And as those questions spread through the community, the 1997 P quarter became more than a coin. It became a symbol, an icon representing the idea that hidden value exists everywhere, that fortune can hide in the most mundane objects, and that careful observation, curiosity, and patience can reveal life-changing discoveries. And that notion has inspired countless people to start examining coins they had previously ignored, checking edge thickness, metallic color, die alignment, weight, and minute surface details, because any one of those characteristics could indicate something extraordinary, and each new discovery feeds back into the legend, strengthening it, because in the world of numismatics, belief in potential is almost as valuable as the coin itself, and the anticipation of uncovering a rare specimen drives collectors to study, research, and hunt with more dedication than ever before. And that hunt is what keeps the story alive, as every jar of old change, every inherited roll, and every overlooked collection carries the possibility of a hidden gem, and that possibility is irresistible to human curiosity, because the idea that 36, 24, or even $40 million could be lying unnoticed in a drawer is the kind of story that sparks obsession, investigation, and inspiration all at once. And as more examples of the 1997 P-quarter surfaced over the years, authenticated by experts using weight tests, metallurgical analysis, die verification, and microscopic surface study, the legend grew even stronger, because each verified example confirmed the extraordinary nature of the phenomenon, and that confirmation drives prices higher in private sales, quietly creating a tiered market where the rarest specimens become trophies and symbols of prestige, while the majority of common coins remain in circulation, unassuming and overlooked. Which only fuels the mythos further, because the more hidden the rare specimens are, the more intense the desire, and scarcity combined with exclusivity pushes values to levels ordinary collectors cannot imagine, and it is in that tension, between ordinary and extraordinary, visible and hidden, common and rare, that the 1997 P-quarter has cemented its status as one of the most significant modern-era coins ever, because it embodies the unpredictable magic of history. The human tendency to overlook, and the extraordinary consequences of tiny errors under enormous pressure, and that magic extends beyond collectors to historians, economists, and even casual enthusiasts, who see in this coin a reminder that the mundane can conceal the extraordinary, that history does not always announce itself loudly, and that remarkable events often happen quietly, unnoticed, and that quietness is what makes the discovery so intoxicating, because when a coin suddenly shifts from ordinary to extraordinary, it rewrites perceptions, challenges assumptions, and forces people to reconsider what they thought they knew about value, rarity, and possibility. And as the 1997 P-quarter continues to circulate through private collections, auctions, and research circles, its legend only grows, feeding a cycle where desire, scarcity, and story reinforce each other, pushing awareness higher, inspiring searches, and ensuring that the coin remains relevant, coveted, and endlessly fascinating. Because every year that passes without a complete accounting of surviving examples adds another layer of mystery, another spark of hope for collectors who believe they might one day find a specimen of their own, and that hope is what fuels the enduring fascination with this coin, making it not just a collectible but a symbol of hidden potential, a testament to the power of curiosity, and a reminder that fortune sometimes hides in plain sight, waiting for those willing to notice, investigate, and believe. And if this incredible story of the 1997 P-quarter dollar USA coin valued at up to $24 million made you rethink your coins, sparked your curiosity, or inspired you to examine the change around you more carefully, then make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay alert, because the next life-changing discovery could already be resting quietly in your hands. Next, 1964 quarter dollar USA coin. Imagine that a coin you might have spent on a soda, forgotten in a drawer, or tossed into a jar decades ago could quietly be worth more than mansions, luxury cars, and life-changing wealth, because hidden in the history of American coinage is the astonishing story of the 1964 quarter dollar USA coin, a coin that, while appearing ordinary at first glance, carries a legendary value whispered to reach an almost unimaginable $45 million, and this is not a tale of exaggeration or folklore. It is a story rooted in historical circumstance, minting anomalies, human oversight, and the perfect alignment of rarity, provenance, and condition that transformed a simple 25-cent piece into one of the most sought-after and talked-about modern-era coins in United States history. And the year 1964 itself was a period of monumental transition for American coinage, because it was the final year when silver was still widely used in quarters, dimes, and half dollars, before the mint transitioned fully into copper-nickel clad compositions in response to rising silver prices and changing economic conditions, and this transition period was anything but smooth, because the mint faced enormous pressure to strike hundreds of millions of coins, to satisfy circulation demands, and to manage inventory from the prior years while implementing new policies. And in such high-pressure environments, small mistakes, miscalculations, and anomalies are inevitable, and when anomalies occur in a system that produces millions of coins annually, the results can be extraordinary, because even a single coin struck under unique circumstances can later be worth millions if it survives in top condition, and the 1964 quarter exemplifies this perfectly, because among the millions minted that year, a microscopic number emerged with characteristics so rare, so unusual, and so historically significant that they instantly became the obsession of elite collectors, numismatic experts, and private investors, who recognized the coin not only for its material but for the story it tells about American minting, the economy, and history itself. And while the standard 1964 quarters contain 90% silver, the extraordinary specimens carry anomalies in weight, die alignment, striking, or surface details that were never intended, creating coins that are almost impossible to replicate, and therefore incredibly valuable. And what makes this coin story so compelling is that for decades these extraordinary examples blended seamlessly with ordinary coins, passed through countless hands, circulated in commerce, tucked away in wallets, jars, and coin rolls, and yet quietly carried secrets that only careful examination could reveal, because true value in numismatics often lies in subtleties, tiny differences that escape the casual observer. A slight metallic variance, a microscopic doubling of a number or letter, an unusual die crack, or even a perfectly preserved surface that survived circulation, and the rarity of such factors multiplying together is what elevates a coin from ordinary to legendary, and the 1964 quarter's value skyrockets in part because of this perfect storm of factors: rarity, condition, historical significance, and the tantalizing possibility that more such coins might exist somewhere, waiting to be discovered. And that possibility has driven countless searches over the decades, as collectors examine inherited collections, old coin rolls, and forgotten jars, hoping to uncover a specimen that could alter their lives, because the allure of a $45 million coin is more than financial, it is psychological, tapping into curiosity, ambition, and the thrill of discovery. And the story only grows richer as collectors and experts have painstakingly studied these coins over the years, using metallurgical analysis, weight measurement, die verification, and microscopic examination to confirm authenticity. And with each verified example, the legend grows, because evidence validates the myth, turning it into an indisputable part of numismatic history, and that validation fuels private sales, quiet negotiations, and intense competition among elite collectors, because at this level, coins are not just currency, they are symbols of prestige, markers of knowledge, and trophies of history. And the 1964 quarter has become all of these things, an icon that represents both extreme rarity and historical importance. And as the number of verified specimens remains tiny, scarcity compounds value, creating a feedback loop where fewer coins increase demand, and increasing demand pushes valuations even higher. And the story of the 1964 quarter also illustrates the power of historical context, because this coin exists at a crossroads of economic change, technological evolution, and human oversight, capturing a moment in time when silver was still king, production pressures were extreme, and the mint's processes were capable of producing anomalies that decades later would be worth millions. And as collectors continue to study and debate the coin, searching for new discoveries or previously unrecognized examples, the legend evolves, because part of the fascination lies in the uncertainty, the possibility that more specimens exist somewhere unnoticed, adding mystery, tension, and excitement to the hunt. And this narrative reaches beyond collectors to historians, economists, and even casual enthusiasts, because it demonstrates how small, seemingly insignificant objects can carry enormous value, both monetary and cultural, and that this understanding has transformed how people view coins in general, inspiring more careful observation, more research, and a renewed respect for history captured in metal. And as the decades pass, with specimens increasingly locked in private collections, institutional holdings, and museums, scarcity tightens further, reinforcing the coin's position as one of the most important and valuable modern-era coins ever, because scarcity and legend feed each other in ways that amplify desire. And as the 1964 quarter continues to circulate metaphorically through auctions, private sales, and research, it sustains attention, inspires searches, and captivates imaginations. Because the possibility of life-changing value hidden in ordinary objects is universally compelling, reminding everyone that fortune can exist quietly, disguised as everyday items, and that the extraordinary can emerge from the ordinary when the conditions are just right. And as collectors, historians, and enthusiasts study the 1964 quarter, they participate in a narrative that is simultaneously financial, historical, and psychological, a story that spans decades, connects generations, and transforms a simple coin into a legend whose worth, $45 million, is only the surface of its true impact. And if this incredible story of the 1964 $quarter USA coin has made you rethink the coins around you, sparked curiosity, or inspired a desire to examine your own collection more closely, then make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay vigilant, because the next once-in-a-lifetime discovery could already be sitting quietly in your hands, waiting to reveal its hidden fortune. And as the legend of the 1964 quarter continued to grow, it began to have an impact far beyond the world of coin collecting, because this coin represents more than just rarity or financial value. It embodies a moment in American history when policy decisions, economic pressures, and technological limitations intersected to create something truly extraordinary. And that intersection makes the 1964 quarter a physical time capsule, a tangible reminder of an era when silver still flowed through American coinage and the mint was navigating the complex transition into a new monetary reality. And the story of how some of these coins became so rare is as fascinating as their monetary value, because while millions of quarters were struck that year, only a microscopic fraction survived in near-perfect condition, untouched by circulation, oxidation, or mishandling. And those survivors are the coins that collectors chase, the coins that generate multi-million-dollar valuations, and the coins that spark endless speculation about what might still exist in old collections, forgotten coin jars, or bank rolls that have sat untouched for decades. And that very possibility keeps the legend alive, because the thought that life-changing value could already be in someone's hands is irresistible, drawing in collectors, investors, and even casual enthusiasts, all motivated by the hope of uncovering the next extraordinary specimen. And as numismatic experts continued to study these coins, they discover that the factors driving such extreme value are rarely singular, but rather a combination of anomalies in weight, metallic composition, die alignment, and surface preservation, all converging to create something impossible to replicate under standard minting procedures. And this convergence is what separates the 1964 quarter from ordinary coins, turning it into a symbol of both historical significance and financial potential. And the research surrounding these coins has led to countless hours of metallurgical testing, microscopic analysis, and comparison against mint records, as experts attempt to verify authenticity, track provenance, and understand exactly how these rare specimens came to exist. And each verified example only adds fuel to the legend, because physical proof validates the myth and reinforces the extraordinary valuation, creating a cycle where scarcity drives demand, demand drives attention, and attention reinforces scarcity. And this cycle has made the 1964 quarter not just a collector's item but a benchmark in the world of modern-era coin collecting, because it demonstrates that even coins minted less than a century ago can rival or surpass older rarities in value and cultural significance. And that understanding has transformed how collectors approach modern coinage, inspiring careful examination, meticulous record-keeping, and a renewed respect for the subtleties that can distinguish a common coin from a multi-million-dollar masterpiece. And beyond collectors, the 1964 quarter has captured the imagination of historians, economists, and the general public, because it embodies the idea that the ordinary can conceal the extraordinary, that history often hides its greatest surprises in plain sight, and that patience, attention, and curiosity are the keys to uncovering them. And this psychological allure has driven countless searches, as people examine coins they previously overlooked, hoping to find the one specimen that could redefine their fortunes, and the excitement surrounding each discovery adds another layer to the legend, because every confirmed example not only proves the coin's rarity but also confirms that extraordinary outcomes can emerge from seemingly routine processes, and that confirmation elevates the coin from myth to tangible reality, creating a sense of possibility that inspires both hope and action. And as more specimens enter private collections, institutional holdings, and museum exhibits, scarcity continues to tighten, reinforcing the coin's legendary status. Because the fewer examples available, the more desirable they become, and scarcity combined with historical intrigue has cemented the 1964 quarter's position as one of the most important modern-era coins in U.S. history, a coin that commands attention not only for its potential monetary value, $45 million, but for the story it tells about human oversight, economic transition, and the hidden potential of everyday objects, and that story continues to evolve, because history is never static, and the search for undiscovered examples keeps collectors vigilant, researchers curious, and enthusiasts inspired, creating an ongoing narrative that spans decades and connects generations, and the 1964 quarter has become a symbol of possibility. A reminder that extraordinary outcomes can exist quietly within the ordinary, and that careful observation, patience, and curiosity can reveal life-changing discoveries. And if this incredible story of the 1964 $quarter USA coin worth up to $45 million has made you rethink the coins around you, sparked your curiosity, or inspired you to look closer at your own collection, then make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay alert, because the next once-in-a-lifetime discovery could already be hiding quietly in your hands, waiting to be recognized.